Well, thank you so much for joining us. Well, I think that song is apt for River State.
it certainly is.
Because even on, and it was on the very 18th, the very day that the president pronounced that, the emergency rule should be over. That was a Thanksgiving service.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank God it did. But, that's just one side of it. Because the recent emergency rule by the president, citing a provision of the Constitution, sparked intense debate about the limits of presidential power and the future of democratic governance in Nigeria. Now, the 6-month rule has ended.
Yes.
And, of course, it was marked with controversy, many questioning its constitutionality and potential abuse.
And the president standing his ground.
And the president standing his ground.
Like River State is a very important state, so we can't allow things to go awry or to degenerate further than they were already. So you needed to stabilize things out.
The question that I'm asking this morning is, what next? How do we gain back all the constitutional virtues that we may have lost?
Yeah.
Emergency rule means some things were suspended.
Yeah.
And if we look at the speech of the governor in particular, and the pronouncements, the responses of the minister of the federal capital,
yeah,
it seems that everything is back now.
Yeah.
But if we look at the governor's speech, there are some questions that I'm asking. What does this mean? What does that mean? So what next?
He did what next? Well, he did say that he's ready, to work with the House of Assembly to ensure that, things get back to order, because they've lost a lot in 6 months. But so he said he's ready to do all that. He wants to work together to ensure, and they too, they say they sat on that first day. It's just the governor that didn't come back. They had a plenary, looked at a lot of things. So I think that all the players, they don't want that to happen again. Even the people that were asking questions, I think everybody will now say, you know what, people will work together to guard against having that again, since they know it can happen.
That is the expectation. But really, is that what is going to happen? Two gentlemen join us for now to have a conversation on this. Three of them, actually. Professor Jideofor Ajibe is a professor of international relations and political science, Nasarawa State University. He joins us. He's also founder of Adonis and Abbey Publishers. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Ayo.
Yeah, we also have Mr. Curtis. Yes, we also have Mr. Curtis Adigba joining us this morning. He is a political scientist. He's a political commentator, a political consultant. He joins us all the way from New Jersey in the United States of America. Thank you for joining us this morning. All right, we also have joining us from River State, Oscar Emabe, who is the Executive Director of the South-South Youth Initiative. He also joins us virtually. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. Let me begin.
Good morning.
Yeah, well, Mr. Emabe, maybe I should begin with you. Has the air in River State changed? Do the people smell new, fresh air, or is just business as usual?
Yeah, good morning once again, and good to be with you this morning. It's unfortunate that we are now talking about another set of situation that we shouldn't be talking about right now, because I said this with days. One, the state is backwards, almost 70 years backward. We don't have anything that we can be able to show as an achievement or what has been achieved from the 6 months state of emergency. At this point, a lot of Rivers people are not happy, even though some claim to be celebrating. But I think we are not happy about it, because we don't see any reason. The emergency rule in Rivers was not necessary at all.
Well, Mr. Emabe, just so we can make progress, we are here now, 6 months after. Do you think anything, we're trying to look at what next? We have complained for the past 6 months. According to the president, 40 cases in courts, right, on this particular matter. Those days are now gone. Emergency rule is over. What next? What do you think needs to be done next so we can make progress? And as you said, redeem the time, if possible.
Thank you very much. Now, what we intend to see at this point is a big difference from the initial situation that we face today. What we experience or what we want to experience any moment from now is a total collaboration and a total working relationship with the State House of Assembly and His Excellency, the Deputy, and other meaningful citizens of the state. What we want to see is an effective working relationship that can be able to foster governance in the state, that can also be able to meet up to the gaps and the challenges that we have faced in the period of 6 months. So we need an effective working situation in the state. We also need a total concentration on economic revival. You can also believe with me that so much have been lost out from the River State Treasury account, and the River State resources have been abused within a period of 6 months. So since that has been done, we want His Excellency Fubara to concentrate more on economic revival and also to concentrate on how to build an effective relationship with the State House of Assembly. Going forward, we also want the governor to think of how he can be able to complete the abandoned project that they actually started and was abandoned because of the state of emergency in the period of 6 months. We want a total completion of the project that was actually kick-started by the governor before it was suspended. Now, if this is done, then we also want to believe that there will be sustenance of peace. We also want to call on the FCT minister, but it's a yes, Mr. Wike, the former governor of Rivers State, to please, we are appealing to the FCT minister, we are appealing to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to please allow His Excellency Fubara to perform his constitutional responsibility. It is his constitutional responsibility and should not be disrupted. We also want his governor to actually
this is appreciated. The first thing that I was hoping you would speak to, my apologies, first thing I was expecting you would speak to is how the people feel about this new air in Rivers State. But, I'll come back to you on that. Prof, the question to you as well, looking at it from political or whatever side you want to look at it. Now, the reason that this question is coming to you now in this way is because there are those who said the issues in Rivers State that warranted the state of emergency was a lot more political than governance. And politics was already beginning to affect governance. Now that 6 months after, things seem to be changing with the pronouncement of the governor and all of that. My question again really is, what next? What do you expect we will see? What are the underlying things we may not be looking at now, which are likely to play out, despite the president's pronouncement, despite the governor's pronouncement? Some things that we may not see or we may not hear, but are likely to affect what next? Professor Adibe.
Well, thank you very much, Ayob. First of all, I would like to look at the possible impact of this on the natural, quote-unquote, natural trajectory or dynamics of reverse politics. There are things that seem to be embedded in reverse politics. One is that the godson always runs out of town, the godfather. It started with Dr. Odele running out of town, his mentor, Harry Marshall, and Odele himself, and Mechi running out of town. Governor Odele, who brought him in, and he was his own godson. And then he came down to the turn of Wike, and Rotimi Amechi. As you know, Wike was Amechi's chief of staff. And when he became governor, he also ran Amechi out of town. Now, shortly after Fubara became governor, he also tried to run Wike out of town. So far, he has not succeeded. So one of the things we'll be looking at from the political perspective is to see whether the trajectory of reverse politics is likely to change. But in his early days, this peace has not been tested. And what we are likely to see is the testing of the, whatever peace agreement they had. One of the signs we saw at the airports, people, who were wearing uniforms, singing praises of Fubara, which sort of tells you it was not organic, and there was a lot of hidden triumphalism in that celebration. And then on the other hand, Nyesom Wike doesn't want to leave anyone in doubt that he's the master in Rivers. So we'll see what happens when the piece is, what some people have called the piece of the graveyard, when it is really tested. The other thing that is of interest to me is what we call machine politics. Machine politics is that process where the godfather, everything is tightly controlled and you have the boss, one boss that everyone has to respect. We are likely to see whether this incident, the declaration of the state of emergency, the emasculation, apparent emasculation of Fubara in the dogfight, whether it has led to bringing back of the old form, the crude form of godfatherism that we started with in 1999, which, as I said, is called machine politics because it's tightly controlled with a boss. Now, if that happens, and you know, we saw a lot of it in Lagos, if that becomes a new pattern, then we are likely to see probably governors being afraid, and then that this veto power might be wielded against them to whip them into line. We still don't know. The other thing that is to be noted in this in general is so far, in any fight between the godson and the godfather, in nearly all the cases, the incumbent governors always prevailed. If you look at go to Kwankwaso and Ganduje in Kanu, in Imo State from Jim Wobodo and you know, the governor he installed, and to Sullivan and the Chimaroke, the governors always have the advantage, but not in this case. We don't know if it is because he had federal might. The other point I want to make is that this conversation, the support for politicians, loyalty to politicians is only for a season. So this conversation about state of emergency and its impact will even become more vociferous either at the time Tinubu has left office, or if for any reason he has become so weakened that other forces are emboldened to challenge him.
Let me ask from this point now, Mr. Adigba, what lessons, do you think may have been learned from the 6 months emergency rule? The first speaker spoke about being taken some years backward and all of that. It was just 6 months. The governor has promised that he will work with the State House of Assembly and, all other parties to ensure that the state moves forward from here. But what lessons do you think have been learned in the last 6 months to ensure that, everything remains calm, going forward, and they work towards actual development of the state? Please unmute your mic.
Okay.
Right. Can Mr. Professor Adibe, if you can, I don't know if you heard the question. While we wait for him to respond. Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. First and foremost, I don't think any lesson was learned, and any was intended to be learned, beyond the fact that when you are a political godson, you don't act like the political godfather. And it's made worse by you having a president who believes completely in the theory of godson and godfather. And then, of course, we saw that the purpose was not for anyone to learn anything beyond the fact that you will have to obey your political godfather. And so what they wanted to achieve basically has been achieved. You whip an errand boy who is trying to defy the order of things in the state back to the line. That has happened. But as to what happens next, I think that we must learn from history. And people say history repeats itself. I don't think it's history that repeats itself. It is the rhymes of history that repeats itself because we don't learn from history. What is going to happen in Rivers State is that we have just laid foundation for another set of industrial scale conflicts. Because the peace that we thought we have achieved in the state has not been achieved. The only thing that will happen is that if the governor continues to act as the good boy, walk on an eggshell, totally abdicate the power of his office, and then allow his political godfather to dictate everything to him. Number two, you are going to see from this moment that the governor will have to decamp from the PDP to the APC for there to be peace in the state. Now he's surrounded by APC loyalists at the local government level, which was one of the intended goals. Look, conduct a local government election. By the time he comes back, you leave him hanging in the air. Now, we have seen again clearly from the political godfather, the FCT minister, that he's not going to let off. He's going to dictate to the governor on whatever he wants. And when people are talking about solution, I have been asking just one simple question. What was the cause of all the crises in the River State, in the state that led to the imposition of the state of emergency? Other than what Fubara told us about his pen, how someone else was interested in that pen, have we dealt with the origin of that crisis? And what was it? It was simply over control of the resources of River State people. So, if the governor has decided to surrender that control, what if he decides at some point that the control is too much for him and he cannot move forward? We're going to have another crisis. Now, I take you to Plateau State. After the state of emergency was declared and the governor was brought back, what happened? He didn't keep to the terms of the agreement, and then we had him impeached by a minority of the State House of Assembly. So it's not yet to horror, because the governor will soon discover that he's just simply sitting on top. And if he decides for whatever reason to begin to look at the things that were done while he was on suspension, there will be crisis. Now, the other thing is that ultimately it's going to be the River State people that are going to lose here. Fubara can decide to play the good boy now, gain whatever he wants to gain from government, and at the end of his tenure, he leaves. But has that solved the problem? And so I don't believe that the state of emergency did much, because it was also possible to have found a political solution which allows the governor to do his job, and then allows also, probably gave the godfather a bit of what he wanted. Now, look at how the state of emergency even ended. The state of emergency was declared by the president, but who informed Nigerians that it was coming to an end? It was the FCT minister, the godfather of the governor. And he's been talking tough. He's been talking about forgiving the governor. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just merely whitewashing of the political situation in River State.
What's interesting,
and I don't think that River people themselves are happy with what has happened.
Well,
but unfortunately,
one thing that's a little befuddling in the entire scenario for me is that not once, if memory serves me right, in his speeches, in his interventions, in his utterances as president, did the president, for one, in any way, manner, shape, or form, reference or mention the FCT minister. In a way, that's told me, and I keep saying to myself, maybe the president is saying in his own professional judgment as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not as a politician, as a president, that according to the law, the FCT minister is not a player, is a non-entity. That's according to the law. And he was probably also saying that if there is politics at play, it should not affect anything governance related at all. So if, because I hear you also saying, yes, if that is the scenario, what then are the options obvious to anyone in this matter?
In this conflict, we have two major actors. One of them is an elected governor, elected by the people like the president. The second party is an appointed minister by the president. The president weighed the big state, relying on Section 305 to suspend the governor. Why didn't the president drop the FCT minister if he wanted genuine peace and not just a political control? What the president basically did was to put his hand on the scale for his favorite son and minister in the conflict.
No, I don't think you have spoken to the angle that I'm speaking of. No, just a second, so that we can put it in proper perspective. As I said, and I think you agree, in this whole scenario, legally speaking, the FCT minister does not appear. Not in the laws, not in the constitution. No, this is not pretending. Just a second. This is not, just 1 second. Let me put the question right, and maybe Professor Adibe may also want to weigh in. Legally, check the constitution, check any law, check the electoral law, whatever. You will see the president. You will see the governor. You will see the House of Assembly, but you will not see the FCT minister in this particular matter.
This is part of the problem in our political conversation. The attempt to play the ostrich. Was Fubara fighting himself alone in River State? Who was the second party in the conflict? Don't you have audios and visuals about the FCT minister always going and calling pressers to talk about the conflict in the state? The role he was playing in River State, was it a constitutional role as a former governor? Now, the president can decide to mention him or not mention him, but that does not take away the reality that it was the other party in the conflict that led to the imposition of a state of emergency.
Just 1 second, Mr. Adiba, just 1 second. Prof, I'll come to you, Mr. Imeabe, in a little while, but Prof, please speak to that angle. I mean, you have spoken about, things that are likely to play out and all of that, but in this whole scenario, not once did the president utter a word in public about the FCT minister. Not that he is not a relevant person, but I'm looking at the eye of the law in all of this scenario, and I'm wondering, how come? I am wondering, and I don't know who else is wondering, how come the president never mentioned the FCT minister? And I'm looking at our laws, I'm looking at the constitution, I'm looking at the electoral laws, I'm looking at whatever, and I'm wondering, hey, is it because the FCT minister is a non-entity, so to speak, in the eye of the law in the issues that we're having in River State?
Yeah, that's one way you possibly can look at it. We can think differently. Other people will also recall that when the president, all the analysis, their own public analysis of why the state of emergency was declared, only one side, only one party to the conflict was constantly being blamed. So that was also, if you want really to, get into the realm of that speculation, you can speculate on one side, the way you were trying to reason, that probably he thought that the FCT angle doesn't matter. But he could have, then if it didn't matter, he could have, as one of the speakers said, suspended him. All the blames were on the governor. So I think really, as I said, we don't really know the kind of a relationship that exists between Mr. President and the FCT minister. As I said earlier, the loyalty of politicians is only for a season. We will only know the true nature of their relationship if President Tinubu declares an interest in recontesting and if he wins. It is only true during that second tenure that he will be able to unfold his real thoughts on the minister. As we saw it with Obasanjo and Buhari, Oshibanjo and Buhari. During the first term, Oshibanjo was made to be larger than life, very effective. And then, after Buhari won a second term, they decided to clip his wing and kept him in the cooler. So if that happens to Nyesom Wissem, if Tinubu secures a second term, and that's when we will know whether he will keep the FCT minister, because from political science, we know the FCT minister is violating certain key laws of power. One of them is that you don't compete for visibility, for popularity, for media attention with your boss. And the FCT minister calls media palace far more than the president does. You go to the city, his photographs, his billboard, he's everywhere on the billboard. This really, in ordinary sense, that's enough for, under the laws of power, for somebody to lose his standing. But maybe he's being tolerated because you never know the role he played in the 2023 elections and what is expected. We don't know the nature of what binds them together. And as I said, their loyalty is only for a season. It's when we enter the next season that, and the current relationship, the current peace agreement is tested. And then there is what we call the fog of war, the unknown variables, and might come up, either strengthen the hands of the president or weakens the hands of the president and strengthens the opposition. During that time, you might see some surprises. So we're just waiting. It's still early days.
Right. And Mr. Imiabe, this one is for you. What do you think about, what has been playing out, all these things that we've been talking about? Prof just talked about the peace agreement that, was signed, in which all parties to the crisis were present, and they did sign that peace agreement. I recall, as at that time, when the president first tried to call them to order, even the governor was saying he will do what will happen, and all that. We talk about godson and godfatherism and all of that, but the FCT minister is an appointed official. The governor is elected. So I think he had a bigger role to play in keeping the peace in the state than the FCT minister, regardless of what the FCT minister says. He could have just kept his calm and just continued with the business of governance. Did you hear my question? Is he there?
Mr. Imiabe, can you hear us?
Okay. Okay. Like I said before, one of those things was the governor of Rivers State. That is something that actually preached against. And if, as we recall, that he preached against was that godfatherism. He was not in support of godfatherism. And I could when
Apologies. Your network we seem to have a problem with we can't hear you properly. So we'll try and fix that and get back to you.
Absolutely. But, this conversation is getting more interesting. Well, Mr. Adigba, now the peace has been pronounced on all fronts. The president said intelligence available to him says peace has largely returned to Rivers State. In his own response to some of the questions of my colleague, Seun Okinbaloye, the minister of the FCT, former governor of the state, also says peace is largely returning and he's not going to be imposing anything on the governor of the state. And you also heard the governor making that pronouncement and saying no price is too steep to pay for peace. In fact, he said something about a popular saying that the costliest peace is better than the cheapest war. What do you see playing out going forward?
I think we heard rhetoric like this from the governor in the past, and we also heard things like that from the FCT minister. Now, to come back to your point, you don't impose peace. You bring about peace on wings of justice and fairness. And whenever you get two people together, two persons together that have their supporters, and you just try to take their temperature, the political temperature, and then you just try to get them to make peace among themselves, usually does not endure, because you are going to go back and these people will begin to listen to their supporters. And then the other problem you are going to have is that you have a situation of absolute surrender by a party now who feels that because he needs to get back to the office, but you know power has its own tractions. So he's back to power, and then every day he gets a new set of instructions about how he should govern the state. He's going to fight back. And that's why I have been saying that, look, okay, first of all, why did the first attempt at making peace fail? Why did it fail? It failed because it was seen by most stakeholders in the state as an unfair and unjust imposition of conditions for peace. Now, when they say to us, oh, we've signed the peace agreement, do we understand or know the terms of this agreement? On one hand, you have the FCT minister saying, oh, the governor is free to do whatever he wants. But then you got a hint when he said there was nothing that said he should have returned the day he was returned to power. Okay? He tells you, I'm not going to nominate any commissioner or anybody for him. But you and I know, of course. So not until we get to know the terms of peace and who is to do what, all we have right now is the peace of the cemetery. And trust me, in the coming days, we are going to see. Look, first of all, and I want you to take note of this and write it down. The governor is going to defect any moment from now to the APC. If he doesn't do that, that would be another reason for conflict. The governor is just been busting. He doesn't have any power left. The only reason why he's been let in is because they couldn't extend the emergency rule. And now he's back. He doesn't have any power. The State House of Assembly is just going to do basically what they want. The local government chairman are just going to act like they're his boss. But look, if that gives River State the peace, the people of River State the peace just to go about their private businesses, it's fine. And like Prof said, this is only for a season. Okay? But we have to go back to constitutionalism. And I keep saying this, and people don't understand until it happens to them. The FCT minister was once the governor of the state. For 8 years, nobody dictated anything. In fact, nobody could tell him. He was like king over the state. And he was the governor. We saw that happen. But he wants to do it to someone after he had promised on national television so many times he doesn't believe in godfatherism. And once he leaves, he's going to leave. And now, because his politics is right, he's getting the help from the federal government because of political calculation.
Right.
But what we are doing to ourselves as a country is that we are destroying constitutional democracy. There is no arrangement outside of the constitution that should make someone who is not the governor to become more powerful than the governor in the state. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no peace in River State. We're just deceiving ourselves. And watch out, very soon there will be another explosion of conflict.
Well, let's taper our language on that, because we actually want peace to reign in River State. But the next couple of
you can't have peace unless you have done justice.
Right. The next couple of months, will unfold, and we'll see how it goes. But to you, Professor, how does this emergency rule in River State? What does it say about the power dynamics between the executive, legislature, and the judiciary in Nigeria? What implications does this actually have for separation of powers?
Thank you very much. Let me answer that question in a different way. Some people have criticized Fubara for not going to court to test his suspension. If we look at what has happened in the National Assembly, Natasha's scenario, in hindsight, it was a very smart move. Because if he had gone to court, by now, you see the PDP governors, they went to court. 6 months down, several months down the line, the Supreme Court has not pronounced. And if he had gone to court, probably they would not have reinstated him. They would have argued that they should wait for the court to deliver judgment on his case. So now, the issue now is there is what you can call, in the former Soviet Union, early days of the former Soviet Union, they talked about capitalist encirclement, that they were surrounded by hostile states, hostile countries that were capitalists, and they had to find a way to solve that problem. That is exactly what Fubara is going to face. He is faced with weaker encirclement. Local governments overwhelmingly in his favor, state legislature overwhelmingly in his favor, National Assembly overwhelmingly against him if he tries to make the wrong move. The presidency itself has made it clear that he was the wrong party and that he failed. In fact, that even the issues of violence that happened, that provided the justification, not justification, the rationalization for the state of emergency, was blamed for it. So he has to now suffer from what we call the weaker encirclement. How does he navigate this? Legislature is not on your side. Judiciary, people say you should have gone to court, and people know. If you had gone to court, you trust with all due respect, when people tell you go to court, what are they trying to tell you in simple terms? So his skills are going to be tested. But even decamping to APC, may not necessarily solve it. There are several reasons why people can decamp now, including the fact that virtually all the other opposition parties are factionalized, and people having little confidence in the judiciary, in somebody who, even if you win on that party, somebody can go to court and say, oh, you won it on the faction that sponsored you shouldn't have sponsored you. So that's one of the reasons many of them are running for political safety. So what is going to happen is, how is this peace going to be tested? How does he navigate the weaker encirclement? And as one of the speakers, you can control your own emotions, what of your own supporters, and what of the fact that power has its own dynamics, and that you can be emboldened to do certain things.
It's very interesting.
Then, what are the intervening variables, the fog of war, the known variables that might be a game changer? If tomorrow, some weekend the president falls out, or maybe the president decides that he needs Fubara more than Wike, the dynamics changes. So
well, I guess we'll have to wait for those days. The thing that one thing that you've said today, Prof, that I am going to register in my heart for a long time is this peace has to be tested. It goes to how it will be tested. Because it seems to me like a large number of people in Rivers State, the elders, the civil society organizations, are largely speaking in ways that seem to support the governor. But how all of that is going to play out, particularly in the light of the members of the House of Assembly being overwhelmingly on one side, almost like they're against the governor, I guess we'll wait to see. And if the things you gentlemen have said here do not go exactly as you have said it, I guess it will be one of the 9 wonders of the world if we have to add a number of 2 to it. But if we can have a last word, Mr. Emeabi, I don't know if you are still there with us. How do you think the people can be mobilized to align with the peace that the governor is calling for? Okay, I guess he's not here. Well, okay, can you hear me, Mr. Emeabi? I think you are muted. Could you kindly unmute?
Okay, I feel like I said, it's going to be a bit difficult for
oh dear. Sincere apologies, Mr. Emeabi. The sound is not cooperative today, and I'm hoping that one of these days we'll be able to have you made ready, because you actually did this within a very short time. We appreciate the fact that you were able to join us. Oscar Miabe is Executive Director of the South-South Youth Initiative. We appreciate your time this morning. Mr. Curtis Adigba joins us all the way from New Jersey. We know it's very, very early hours in New Jersey right now, and then you have woken up to join us. Thank you so much for your time. He's a political consultant, as well as Professor Jidofo Adibe, who is a professor of international relations and political science, Nasarawa State University, Kefi. He's also founder of Adonis and Abe Publishers. We appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we return, you know, we've faced a scare for 6 months in River State. Well, there is a kind of scare that we have faced before.
Yes, almost semi-permanently.
That it seems to be, is it coming back or not? Join us, but in the meantime, please don't forget your cup of cocoa.